kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Nichecast. I'm the Diggity Dude Doc, and I'm joined by the Wobbly Wildcard to talk about Blackcaps cricket. They had a good test win over Sri Lanka in the second test of that two-test series, which was also the second test of the Test Championship, which was also part of a rather amazing kind of week, 2 weeks for Test cricket. Beauty around the world. And intriguing times for the Blackcaps, considering we've also got a T20 series against Sri Lanka coming up with the World T20 on the horizon as well. So after we talk about the Blackcaps test team, we will talk about the Blackcaps World T20 squad to face Sri Lanka in the context now, which is good to have, of a World T20 looming on the horizon. We haven't rolled out too many podcasts recently because if we were a sports team, injury crisis has hit the niche cage and it's just been tough times. Everyone's a bit fucked up at the moment, so we're just trying to do our best, but that has resulted in podcasts falling away a bit. Our production has fallen away a bit, so we are human and we are just trying to do our best here, so bear with us. But we do have a Blackcaps podcast for you today. Wobbly Wildcard, your man Tim Southee, he's taking wickets. How are you?
Yeah, what do you know, eh? Old Timmy, bringing the wickets back. We did talk about him a bit last week, didn't we? And it was like he has been picking up the production in recent times. He has been getting a few more wickets, particularly in home series, which has coincided with him playing a little more judiciously in the odd team selections. Not always like if they need to drop a seamer, it's often been him in recent times. I saw that at the World Cup, for example, so it's not just Test cricket. His status in the ODI team is very different to his Test team because at least he does get the odd 5-wicket haul in the Test matches when the thing's seaming around in New Zealand, whereas in ODI cricket, it's been pretty sceptical for 3 or 4 years for that fella at the moment, and he might be in a bit of a position there. But getting wickets, and not just in Test cricket, because like I say, he's been chipping them out in recent times, but getting them away from home in a important Test series. First one of the Test Championship, getting wickets in a situation where, for example, Neil Wagner didn't play either Test, so he actually held off a guy who in recent times has been pushing back against him, seemingly pushing ahead of him in the depth charts there in terms of who makes way if you need to pick another spinner, and in this case they did, but it wasn't Tim Southee. Tim Southee held his spot. Tim Southee justified his selection extremely well in the second Test, and he helped bowl us to a Test victory there. So I think for sure got to give some big raps to old Timmy boy, don't you? There's another act in this play yet.
There certainly is, and Tim Southee, best average of the Kiwi bowlers in Sri Lanka, 2 Test series. He was the only Kiwi bowler to average below 20. He took 7 wickets at average 18.28, whereas Trent Boult averaged 21, Ajaz Patel averaged 26, Will Somerville averaged 32, and yeah, that's it. Colin de Grandhomme averaged 21.5. So Tim Southee, best Kiwi bowler in Sri Lanka. Who would have thought it?
Tim Southee, best bowler in Sri Lanka, and Trent Boult, second best. It's not necessarily what you expected when they picked, a bulk of spinners to be part of the touring squad. But there you go. Yeah,
that was. We'll get into this when we talk about the T20 squad. But it is weird, when these squads are released, New Zealand Cricket do a little write-up and they try and explain, or I don't even know what they're trying to do when they talk about these squads. And that was the whole thing, 4 spinners for Sri Lanka, wow. Who are the best bowlers? Seam bowlers. Who have usually been the best bowlers based on their limited cricket in Sri Lanka? Trent Boult and Tim Southee. Like prior to the series, I brought up those stats about the Sri Lankan seamers in Sri Lanka not being very good, and the Kiwi seamers, Trent Boult and Tim Southee, being very good in Sri Lanka. And it's just weird where New Zealand Cricket choose to put their attention in these squad namings, as we'll definitely explore with the T20 squad, because I've got an interesting little nugget for you there. But yeah, 4 spinners, one of them didn't even play in Todd Astle, so what's the point of him being there? Mitchell Santner, no wickets in 24 overs, didn't really do anything. And Ajaz Patel, Will Somerville were fantastic. I love what they're offering this Blackcaps team. But for mine, the Blackcaps won that second test largely on the seam bowling, which was weird because Colin de Grandhomme came in, and I don't know where you want to take that conversation about Colin de Grandhomme, but simply put, the Blackcaps seamers were better than the Sri Lankan seamers in that second test, and the Blackcaps seamers led the Kiwis to victory with the ball. Obviously, there were runs scored, as we'll talk about in a jiffy, but as you just said, man, they're like Kiwi seamers, not the best conditions for seam bowling, but they won that test. They won the bowling half of that test for the Blackcaps.
Yeah, they did. And if you look at the Sri Lankan side of the stats as well, Suryangalakmal didn't bowl enough overs. I think that's pretty clear in hindsight. He only took 4 wickets, but he did also have the second best average for any Sri Lankan bowler as well. And we know they were leaning heavy on their spinners throughout the thing too. Couldn't say so much about old mate Kumara, who took 3 wickets at an average of 61 over the 2 tests, but, so it goes. Both of them only used sparingly, both of them only bowled 40-something overs, which is, I think, compared to, Southee bowled 60 overs, Bolt bowled just 1 ball shy of 66, so we certainly leaned a bit more on our seam bowlers in that second test, and we had a lot more success in being able to bowl Sri Lanka out a couple times. So yeah, I don't think that's a coincidence that that's the one we won, whereas the one where we bowled mass overs for spinners was the one where we weren't able to bowl them out in their 4th innings and stop them from chasing down a target and winning that game. So yeah, that seems pretty typical by the script New Zealand Blackcaps cricket there, but I mean that's what you want, isn't it? Like the better teams are able to dictate play towards the way that they want things to go, and conditions which aren't necessarily the most friendly to seam balls. Though I do remember us looking at their career stats of some of these players in Sri Lanka, and Bolt and Southee have both taken wickets there in the past, so it's not unfamiliar and it's not out of the ordinary. But yeah, certainly with 4 spinners in the squad, you probably would have thought that they would also be taking the bulk of the wickets, and Ajaz Patel did in that first innings of the first test. He took 5 for, I think he only took 4 wickets in the next 3 innings combined, but bowled pretty well, and got 1 or 2 pretty important wickets along the way as well. I thought Will Somerville started poorly in the first innings of that test, or certainly the first day or 2 of that test, and then came good as it went on, and was probably more effective going through the rest of the series and into the second test, but also didn't get as many wickets. Had the lowest average of any Kiwi bowler who took a wicket. So, but yeah, like you say, they did bowl pretty fantastically though, the 2 spinners. But when we needed wickets, when we needed to skittle them in the time that mattered, it was the reliable seam bowlers who've done that before, who've been there, won us test matches in the past. They're the guys who we leaned on. They're the guys who delivered, and I guess that's how you win a test match, isn't it? Like, you rely on your best players to give you their best performances. And in a series where Kane Williamson scored 24 combined runs, we were able to win a test match away from home while facing a series defeat if we didn't, and get our test championship thing up and running with some good points there, and generally have a pretty excellent performance, I think, in that second test. I think the fact that our seam bowlers were so effective is a good example of the Blackcaps delivering on the game plan and doing what they like, playing to their strengths and doing the things that it takes for them to win the way that they play cricket, not trying to milk things and be like, oh, we're touring in Sri Lanka, so we have to play like Sri Lanka here. I think that's a pretty important thing to note for the Blackcaps, probably moving forward throughout this test championship, to be honest, and then beyond, because a good team doesn't get dictated to by conditions are one thing, because you do have to adapt to conditions, but you don't want to throw the to quote a phrase, to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You gotta still be playing your style of cricket, and the Blackcaps know. We saw at the World Cup, they just played their sort of 80% reliable, this is how we play, and we'll wait for you to make the mistakes. We'll slowly enclose around you with a bit of scoreboard pressure. We'll settle for this kind of score, knowing our bowlers can do this kind of thing. And if conditions aren't right and we're looking at a 300-plus wicket, we're going to be struggling. But if we can keep scores under 250, then we know we're in with every chance. And things broke right at the World Cup at the right time for them to be able to, play extremely well in those kind of circumstances. And it carries on in the Test team. I think that's a big lesson of what the Blackcaps are doing these days. Is they're a confident team who know how they're going to win Test matches, and they've been winning a lot of Test matches lately, to be fair. And it's important here to see them win one away from home, because obviously, apart from that UAE series, most of those great series, like their big run I think they won 6 Test series in a row. Well, 5 of them were at home when you're expected to win most often than not. I'm pretty sure we weren't playing Australia in any of those times, so good signs, I reckon, from the Blackcaps. I was real pumped about that second Test victory. I thought they played excellently, and in a way that bodes pretty well for the rest of the Test Championship, which is good because I was confident coming into this. And that first Test had a couple wobbles, but they came good. Doc, they came good.
Tim Southee and Trent Boult, it feels like for the Blackcaps to win Tests. You mentioned Ajaz Patel's wickets in the first Test, and Will Somerville was more productive in that first Test, I think. But it's for the Blackcaps to win Tests, Trent Boult and Tim Southee need to be taking wickets. So Tim Southee, when the Blackcaps win a Test, he averages 22.28. And Trent Boult, when the Blackcaps win a Test, he averages 20.99. So it just feels like Tim Southee and Trent Boult, regardless of the conditions, are more influential than the spinners, which goes into your idea of the Blackcaps figuring out how they are going to win Tests. I don't think it's something that is locked in. I don't know if the Blackcaps have truly figured it out just yet, because I think there might still be a desire or a being lured into playing how the other team might play or how the conditions dictate. Whereas what you're saying, what I think I agree with, is that in conditions like Sri Lanka, you want to offer something different to what the Sri Lankans face in Sri Lanka. You don't want to come in there with a spin heavy. If the Blackcaps come out with the 4 spinners that they've selected to tour Sri Lanka, where it's going to be spinning all crazy, that's what Sri Lankan batsmen thrive upon. They know how to deal with, let's be honest, Ajaz Patel, Will Somerville, they're good spinners, and I like what they're doing, but they're not very unique in what they do. They're not something different to what Sri Lanka deal with on a consistent basis. And if you're going to beat Sri Lanka in Sri Lanka, you need to throw something different at them. You need to throw different combinations. You need to have a different arsenal and variety to work with. And it's not just a case of having good seam bowlers like Trent Boult, Tim Southee. They're experienced. They know what to do. They know how to use the crease. They know how to... The thing I was impressed about was how all the Blackcaps bowlers attack the stumps. So whether it's Colin de Grandhomme as well, he's bowling stump to stump, and then Tim Southee's using the crease to get different angles on attacking the stumps. They both move the ball either way. They can lean into bowling short as well. And then Neil Wagner didn't play a Test in this Test series, but he could have been a factor, as we talked about last time with regards to someone like Lockie Ferguson as well. The Blackcaps could go to a subcontinent nation and look to use the same bullying tactics that they use in New Zealand, because Neil Wagner's still going to bowl short. Lockie Ferguson can still blast teams away by bowling short and touching them up, if that's the plan. But the Blackcaps just feel like they're equipped now to go to these other nations and be brave enough to offer something different. I think we've seen New Zealand teams in the past go to these countries to play Tests, and they play how the host wants them to play, instead of doubling down on what they're good at and backing them to perform their skills and execute their skills in foreign conditions.
Yeah, and that's a sort of a trick that a lot of teams do fall for all over the world, because it's difficult when you we've seen Sri Lanka come to New Zealand before and pick too many seamers, and guys who just can't get the most out of the juicy New Zealand wickets, and then we're just going to pick them off, and fellas are going to score big runs against them. And this is a trick that most teams have to come to grips with, and it is a balance, isn't it? Because what you're saying was especially true in the first test, where we did pick 3 spinners. Santner didn't take a wicket. Somerville and Patel weren't able to bowl Sri Lanka out while defending what at first felt like a fairly reasonable target that would set them. Going on to lose that test match, just didn't have the impetus, like the cut through. We couldn't get wickets when we needed them. Second test, drop a spinner, bring in Colin de Grandhomme, rely a little bit more on your seamers, and Boult and Southee did the business. They bowled Sri Lanka out in the 4th innings, exactly the same circumstances, but with a lower score to defend. And although we did have another innings up our sleeve, to be fair, so not quite the same circumstances, but close enough to where on the final day of a test match, we were trying to bowl Sri Lanka out in their conditions in order to win a test match. And first time we weren't able to do it. Second time we adapted, got that balance a little bit better in the Blackcaps' favour, more towards their. I think you're right. I think they have a bit of a. There's an element to their sort of team identity that they don't quite have figured out. But what they have that they know and that they rely upon is that they get wickets from their opening seam bowlers and they get runs from their world-class batsmen. And in this case, Ross Taylor scored a 80 odd in the first test, didn't do much apart from that. Kane Williamson scored 24 runs in the entire thing, but this is why I think we'll come back around to this this topic as well. It's quite an important one to talk to on this podcast here. Tom Latham in test matches, I think I'll need your sign-off on this one, but can we graduate him to world-class status as a test match opener?
We can, but can we just stick to the... stick to the bowling. Yeah, stick to the bowling for a second, because Colin de Grandhomme did perform with the bat as well, but I just want to focus on Colin de Grandhomme.
He did.
And what he's offering the Blackcaps. So his seam bowling, he's a prototypical Kiwi seamer, but in other conditions around the world, that's going to still be unique. So it kind of looks like Colin de Grandhomme's not going to offer a whole lot, but then has Sri Lanka faced the Colin de Grandhomme in Sri Lanka before? No, not really. That's not something that appears in their domestic setup too often, and suddenly you've got a seamer nibbling it around, stump to stump, 125 Ks. You can't really score off him, and that presents a new opportunity, and it feels like that balance of the bowling attack was just a bit better, even though Colin de Grandhomme and Mitchell Santner are fairly similar bowlers in what they do. One's a spinner, one's a seamer, but they bowl tight, they don't give much away, and they help build pressure. But Colin de Grandhomme feels, and he was, more effective. How do you view that Colin de Grandhomme, Mitchell Santner bowling situation? Who are you leaning towards selecting regardless of conditions, and how do you view the skill sets they offer this team?
Well, I thought in the first test that de Grandhomme should have played ahead of Southee, and I mean, given how Southee performed in the second test in particular, I'm happy to have seen them both in there. But CDG is he has been a divisive figure in the past, and I think I still, despite the fact that he bowled an excellent 10 overs in the World Cup final, I still don't think he's in our best ODI 11. In test matches, de Grandhomme has, I think as he started to score runs, and in the last year or so, I think maybe even it's a little bit longer, he has had a few more influential innings, whereas he started strictly as a bowler, getting was it 5? It might have been 6 for on debut against Pakistan, and that was sort of his in. Now we've seen him produce more as an all-rounder, and yeah, I don't think you can separate the fact he bowled 21 good overs at the lowest economy rate of any New Zealand bowler, which is his thing. He is going to nip the ball around just a little bit, but mostly he's just going to bowl wicket to wicket, 122 k's an hour. You can't lose your pace on a slow wicket if you never had any pace to begin with, and he's just tough to score off, and that locks down an end and allows us to attack somewhere else. It puts pressure on batsmen, especially, like, I think just being able to tie down an end like that in terms of just not conceding runs is becoming a little more important in the current era, because batsmen score at quicker runs and are used to playing different forms of cricket where you do have to up the run rate more often, and patience isn't as, you don't get so many Jeffrey boycotts these days, and that's a good thing for Test cricket, by the way, that it's forcing more results. It's more interesting to watch, but it does mean that someone like Colin de Grandhomme's skill set is, because I think there's an interesting parallel here with Chris Harris, who 20 years ago was sort of the same kind of bowler, but never really got to go in the Test team, never was able to hold it down in the Test team, because it wasn't enough just to bowl slow and not concede runs if you weren't getting wickets. De Grandhomme maybe is, I don't know, maybe he's a slightly better Test bowler, because he does seem to be able to pick up wickets, but yeah, I think he's evolving these days into a genuine all-rounder, and his innings coming in at a great time for him to come in, with runs on the board where we're looking to up the run rate and just cash in instead of total. Batting with BJ Watling, who's a stabler partner down the other end as you could possibly ask for. And he just came in and started chipping sixes down the ground, looking effortless, scoring runs at a quick rate, got 80-odd, did a very Colin de Grandhomme thing the next day where he got out, was his second ball of the day when he could have been batting for 100. But, I mean, the damage had been done the night before, and when you're seeing Colin de Grandhomme being able to influence a game on both sides, I wouldn't say he was a major influence with the ball, but he at least did his job and allowed other bowlers to take wickets. I think he's becoming a pretty useful all-rounder there, and compared to Mitchell Santner, I mean, Mitchell Santner cannot do what Colin de Grandhomme did with the bat in the New Zealand innings in that second test. He's incapable of that. He can't come down and effortlessly plug sixes down the ground, picking them out of the stadium over the commentary box. He's just, as much as we're told about Mitchell Santner's potential with the bat, he's never done half as much with the bat as Colin de Grandhomme has done at Test level. So, I mean, I don't even think it's a conversation at this point when their bowling is basically, different bowlers, but sort of the same effect, isn't it? You like that, with de Grandhomme, because he's a seamer, he's the third option normally, but really he's the fourth or fifth option in the bowling lineup. Just depends on when you get to your spinners, and you're just trying to slow things down and create a bit of scoreboard pressure that way, get their run rate freaking out, and it's exactly what Mitchell Santner does. But Mitchell Santner takes fewer wickets, scores less runs. I mean, I think Santner's position now that there are other spinners really putting him under a bit of pressure in that role. And you've also got another all-rounder who's putting him under pressure and pretty comfortably outperforming him. I mean, it's not even a conversation anymore, is it? Like, Colin de Grandhomme is leagues ahead of what Mitchell Santner has done in terms of pure production. Just ignore the potential, ignore the ages, ignore what they could be in the future, because the Test Championship's happening now. We can't be building for the future. Santner's had a lot of chances. I think it's just not a conversation at the moment. De Grandhomme is performing at Test level when he gets the opportunity. He's not necessarily going to play every game as we saw in the first Test, but he, in his own way, did exactly what you want of him in that second Test, and you can't really ask much more than that.
Well, yeah, it's all honkadory after Colin de Grandhomme goes bang. But that's all Colin de Grandhomme can do. So there's going to be situations, and there have consistently been situations where Colin de Grandhomme cannot bat like a normal batsman. He can only do one thing, and it's fine when that one thing is executed brilliantly, but there are going to be situations when the Blackcaps, this has happened before, and it's going to happen again, the Blackcaps will need Colin de Grandhomme to save a Test, and this was a case of Colin de Grandhomme being the best Colin de Grandhomme he can be, but his style of cricket doesn't lean into that happening all too often. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know. Like, it's, if you can carry that kind of volatility, and as long as everyone, Kiwi cricket fans, selectors, players, as long as everyone knows who Colin de Grandhomme is, what he's capable of, and don't have like these outlandish expectations, because I think the more you see Colin de Grandhomme bat and be able to hit sixes, the expectation for Colin de Grandhomme to be able to defend stoutly and save an innings also increases when the two have nothing to do with each other. So there are going to be situations where Colin de Grandhomme is going to let everyone down because he's just being Colin de Grandhomme. And it's just something to keep an eye on moving forward. Is with Colin de Grandhomme, we know he bats a certain way. He does a good job with the ball, and in that regard, he's a limited cricketer. However, as long as everyone knows that that is the case, happy days. Just don't expect Colin de Grandhomme to save a test for Aotearoa at this stage. I'm not saying Mitchell Santner, because as you said, Mitchell Santner is not going to come out and play an innings like Colin de Grandhomme, and Mitchell Santner hasn't really shown the ability to bat for a long time in Test cricket either. So I'm not saying that Mitchell Santner is any way better than Colin de Grandhomme. I'm just saying Colin de Grandhomme is what he is, and everyone involved needs to accept that moving forward and not have unreasonable expectations about what he offers his team.
Yeah, that clarity of role is the key thing, because if you're expecting de Grandhomme to be anything other than this, exactly right, like he's not going to be. He is a cricketer who is, he is what he is, and that's all he's going to be. But that particular, that cricketer that he is quite a useful one within the scope of this current Blackcaps team, when you have seam bowlers who can take wickets, and when they don't, we tend to not do very well, so that's beside the point. He doesn't carry that wicket-taking burden, and when he bats, ideally he is coming in with a platform in order to put the polish on an innings and add that extra 60 to 80 runs or whatever that could be the difference in terms of getting into your bowling for the next innings. So I think that role for the Blackcaps is ideal for someone like Colin de Grandhomme, and I think he's doing a very excellent job. His test batting average is 39.26 right now at a strike rate of 90. He's been performing recently. I think he's got 350s in his last 4 innings. Like, he's been doing a very good job at doing that. If he has to come in a different situation where we're like 90 for 5, and maybe he can come up with a great counter-attack and get us, put the pressure back on the bowlers finally. Maybe. More likely, he's probably going to miss a straight one and be out LBW or something like that, or sky one up and get caught in the boundary. But if that's the situation, and everyone's aware of who Colin de Grandhomme is, what he offers, why he's being picked, then you can't blame Colin de Grandhomme for that. You blame the 5 wickets that fell before that, if that's the case. Like, he needs a platform in order to do what he does, and I think hopefully that's implicit in his selection, is that you just don't want to put him in a bad situation like that to bat, and if you do, it's the same as expecting tail order batsmen to bail you out at the end of an innings when you haven't got enough runs. It's like, well, it's not their fault if they don't do it, because they're just doing they're just doing the best they can, and the best they can is, whatever it is. It's your top order who failed if that's the case. So yeah, it is a situation where we do have pressure on our top 6 to score a lot of runs. Watling moving up to 6, the way the Blackcaps lineup is currently sort of arranged. So yeah, it's pressure on those guys, but we do have, we've clarified now, we have 3 world-class batsmen in their top 6, plus BJ Watling, who's been scoring a little bit of a resurgence for BJ Watling in recent times. I think he got a very, very good 100 in that second test. So I'm relatively confident with what our top 6 offers. If it were more flaky as it has been in the past, then maybe someone like Colin de Grandhomme is a luxury you can't afford. But with the makeup of the team as it currently is, with a lot of guys in that top order who can grind out runs over extended periods of time at the crease, I think it's certainly a luxury that gives the Blackcaps something different, and he does provide an X factor in that team with the bat that we pretty simply do not have otherwise. Like, he's basically the guy who can offer that, and it's nice to have something like that, especially for counter-attacking purposes, and especially the way I think a lot of his best runs have come in a situation like against Sri Lanka and Colombo, where he's coming in with a relatively large score on the board to turn a relatively large score into a very large score under the conditions. So, yeah, I'm pretty stoked with Colin de Grandhomme's position in the team at the moment, I reckon. And yeah, it has to be clarified that it is a position that is made possible by opening bowlers who take wickets and by top order batsmen who can occupy the crease for a long time.
And as we saw in the Ashes, having a player with that kind of X factor is incredibly important to win tests. But the difference between Ben Stokes and Colin de Grandhomme in terms of cricketing ability is that Ben Stokes went through a patch in that innings where he wasn't scoring runs and his sole focus was to defend, and then he turned it up to take the game away from Australia, whereas Colin de Grandhomme can only really do one of those things. So it just shows you the levels to that kind of there's levels to batting, there's levels to bowling, there's levels to being an all-rounder as well. I asked you about the impact of the batting coach, Craig McMillan. This was his first tour not with the Blackcaps, and we had Peter Fulton, he's the batting coach there. I was kind of pondering just the impact Peter Fulton might have had on the batting group. Obviously, he didn't have much of an impact on Kane Williamson, considering Kane Williamson scored 24 runs at an average of 8 in 3 innings throughout that series, so bit of a stinker from old Kano. Mitchell Santner scored more runs than Kane Williamson in that whole series, which is interesting. But there were, as you said, Tom Latham, world-class. I would say that BJ Watling's a world-class wicket-keeper batsman at the moment as well.
Yep.
And I think,
for sure,
specifically with the Test team, the Blackcaps batting lineup is far more, because we talked about throughout the World Cup that there's 2 great batsmen in that team, Ross Taylor, Kane Williamson, whereas the Test team, it feels like it's a lot more even. Sure, Ross Taylor and Kane Williamson still the best batsmen. They're among the best batsmen in the world. But the baseline level, whether it's Tom Latham, Jeet Raval didn't have a great series, 37 runs, average of 12, whatever. His first time going to Sri Lanka, all good. You just learn, keep going. Henry Nicholls was solid in the middle order. Didn't go big with any scores, but, faced a couple of balls in the middle order and provided some level of partnership in the middle order. But just the baseline, Tom Latham, BJ Watling, Ross Taylor, Kane Williamson, Henry Nicholls, Jeet Raval, they're all solid international batsmen. So I was curious just to get a gauge of what might have taken these guys to a next level that we are currently at right now. And then I went into Cricinfo and I found that Tom Latham, change of coach. Gary Stead comes in as coach. I set the date as the 1st of October last year, which I believe was before the UAE tour, which correct. Gary Stead took over. Tom Latham's career average is 44. His average since October 1st, 2018 is 72. So Tom Latham has averaged 72 since Gary Stead took over as coach, which coincides with Tom Latham maturing as an international cricketer. So it's not purely Gary Stead, big it up to you. It's Tom Latham just getting better as a human and growing up and settling into international cricket and so on. But there's a clear correlation there. BJ Watling, just a little jump, nothing too crazy. 38 career average and a average under Gary Stead at 40. So his batting has improved as well. I might just check in with Henry Nichols here as well when I throw it back to you. But those are interesting numbers there. And we don't need to discuss the role of the batting coach, but it appears that generally, with Gary Stead as the Blackcaps coach, players are improving, because we've seen it with Lockie Ferguson, with the ball. We've seen it to a lesser extent with someone like Jimmy Neesham. Tim Southee has just had a resurgence, and Gary Stead appears to be using Tim Southee wisely. So, to come back to the batsmen, do you feel like Gary Stead has had a positive impact? We don't know how, but do you feel like he's had that kind of positive impact on the likes of Tom Latham, BJ Watling, the batsmen, who are now averaging 76 in 2 tests in Sri Lanka for Tom Latham?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, don't they? But I sort of feel like you got to look at it from a holistic point of view as well, because what Gary Stead does is part of a team unit alongside Craig McMillan / Peter Fulton, alongside all their sports scientist teams, and alongside Kane Williamson and his influence, and alongside, I think most importantly, like a batsman gets to the international level. At that point, you don't really need a lot of coaching, you just need a little bit of refinement. So I almost think that just having someone to be able to chat it out with, just someone who will listen and maybe give you the odd little bit of advice, but mostly just keep your head up, keep you positive, get you in the right mind frame, is almost more important. The other thing, of course, that I think is best not to ignore when we look at Gary Stead's reign in Test cricket so far is that we've played 3 tests against Pakistan away, 2 against Sri Lanka at home, 2 against Bangladesh at home, and now 2 away to Sri Lanka. So all teams that we traditionally do very well against, subcontinent teams who aren't India. So that's got to be a little bit of a factor as well, as the teams that we've played. And on that note is going to be, I mean, what are our next 2 series? We've got England at home in a non-Test Championship series, but which will still be pretty interesting. I don't think it sounds like we're going to see a top strength England team coming off the Ashes in the World Cup. So I think they're going to be a little bit there for the taking. So maybe the Blackcaps will use that as an opportunity without Test Championship points on offer, just to sort of like, maybe I think that's a great opportunity, first of all, for Lockie Ferguson to play his first Test matches. Maybe someone like Will Young might come in. Like maybe there might be just a little bit of rotation just to give some guys a bit of a refresher. But following that, we've got in December we're playing Australia in Australia, so that's going to be a real test for Gary Stead, for some of these batsmen, for all these guys. Tom Latham, though, like you mentioned, he averages was 70 something going back to the start of the Pakistan series. I'm looking at his scores from that Pakistan series. He got 13-0, 22, 54, and 10. So I think if you look to the start of the home summer to now, it's going to look something even more astounding for Tom Latham, because his last 8 scores are 264 not out, 10, 176, 161, 4, 30, 45, and 154. So he's got, in his last 8 innings, he's got scores of 150 plus 4 times, and he already had 6 Test centuries before that, so he's got 10 in total now. It's past 15 times, so clearly a guy with a very good conversion rate that's getting a lot better at the moment as well. Mate, I mean, runs are gold in Test cricket, and we've got an opener who can lay a platform like that with Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor coming in. I mean, that's why we're able to win a Test match without Taylor or Williamson getting any runs in Colombo there. It's because we had Tom Latham and BJ Watling both turning up, and if you can share the runs around like that, you're in a pretty good position. It's it really changes the whole complexion, and we saw this in the ODI team as well, didn't we? Where a previously world-class batsman in Martin Guptill, a guy who'll probably continue to score great runs at a world-class sort of skip in ODI cricket, but he had a terrible World Cup with the bat, and it ruined the Blackcaps batting order. We were so reliant on Williamson, and to a slightly lesser degree Taylor, and more than anything we were so reliant on our bowlers to be able to defend small targets because we weren't scoring runs at the top of the order. And having Tom Latham doing this in the Test team makes everything look so much rosier, and it's probably a good thing for Jeet Raval as well, who had a tricky tour here. But one thing to remember with Raval and de Grandhomme is that this was each of their only second tour away with the Test team, because de Grandhomme's got to play a fair few ODIs, so it's worse for Raval as well, because Raval went on that away tour to Pakistan. That was his first away series. Now this is his second away series. I mean, these are experiences you don't get to find otherwise. Like, even New Zealand A tours don't quite compare to the actual cauldron of a Test match. So great learning opportunity, we'll say, and the fact that other guys scored runs means that the pressure on Raval is eased. He did score 100 against Bangladesh earlier in the summer, so it's not like he's under all that much pressure. And also his job isn't really to score big tons, it's to just see off the new ball and allow the other guys around him to do well. So I don't think there's anything we've got to worry about here. The one guy we haven't mentioned is Henry Nicholls, so how are those numbers looking?
Henry Nicholls, career average of 44.25.
Lovely.
Average under Gary Stead of 61.9.
Beautiful.
So it's kind of undeniable. Henry Nicholls, Tom Latham, BJ Watling have all improved under Gary Stead, which is just an interesting idea moving forward throughout the Test Championship, now that we do have that solid schedule and consistent schedule in the Test Championship as well. If you don't mind, Wildcard, do you have any more thoughts on the Test team or what's happening there?
Well, only one thought, which is that I wouldn't mind rechecking those averages under Gary Stead after we've been to Australia. So we'll give it a couple months, and then if they're still holding up at that point, then I reckon we got something legit. But signs are good at this point. I believe we better talk of some 2020 before we go, though, right?
Yeah, it could be the average destroyer touring Australia.
It's been known to happen.
So we'll hold that thought. So this T20 team, like T20 cricket, international T20 cricket, is a whole lot more interesting now that we have context with it. I have been in the wilderness about T20 international cricket for a while now, just because there's no meaning to it. But now we do have a World T20. We've got to build a team to compete at a high level and hopefully win the World T20. So I just want to walk through this T20 squad who are going to face Sri Lanka in 3 T20 games, and players who are not in the squad who are in the last T20 squad. So the last T20 series was against India in Aotearoa, and Kane Williamson, Doug Bracewell and Blair Tickner are not in the squad that were in that last squad, while Todd Astle, Tom Bruce and Seth Rance come into the squad. So just to start with the New Zealand cricket shenanigans, they, in their press release, let me just get this little quote here. Kane and Trent played an enormous role in our recent World Cup campaign, and with a big summer ahead, we see it as a good opportunity to give them a rest, which is fine. But Trent Boult last played a T20 game in February 2018. So Trent Boult resting from a T20 series isn't like an isolated thing. He has not played a T20 international since February 2018. So he has not been in the T20 team for almost a year and a half. So why Trent Boult missing a T20 series is notable, I'm not sure. There's no news there. Trent Boult, I definitely believe Trent Boult will be at the World T20. I think he's a fantastic T20 bowler. He's got a T20 international average of 21.18, which is amazing. He's got a franchise general T20 record of average of 27, which is also amazing, fantastic. And he plays enough T20 franchise cricket where he doesn't need to play T20 internationals, just do what he does in the IPL, wherever else it is. And come World T20 time, Trent Boult should be there. But Trent Boult the current version of Trent Boult doesn't play T20 internationals. So I just wanted to make that clear. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I don't think Bolt and Williamson should be playing in this series anyway. I mean, there are a couple guys like Ross Taylor likes to play all three formats, and he was controversially and somewhat shadily dropped a couple years ago. So it's, I guess it's one of those situations where maybe you just give him the opportunity, and if he's keen to play, then fair enough. Other than that, like, there aren't too many three format players that are in there, other than Southee, who didn't play a big role at the World Cup. The de Grandhomme, I suppose you could say, but de Grandhomme is actually a really useful 2020 player. So, I mean, it seems to be a pretty standard. It's always an interesting one, the 2020 squad, more so than the 2020 games, because 2020 international cricket is a bit boring. Just personally, outside of the World Cup, certainly. But the 2020 format seems to be where they like to bring through a few more of those guys who they're eyeing up for ODIs in particular down the line. So you do see like Tom Bruce holding the spot there, Seth Rance getting another go, Scott Kugelheim, Tim Seifert, those kind of, Daryl Mitchell. I don't know if he'll ever play anything other than a 2020 international Daryl Mitchell, but he's there. The one thing I'm curious about is, considering he's not in the test team, like, what's Jimmy Neesham got to do to get picked for a 2020? Like, he batted in our super over, so like you were saying about what a good bowler Trent Boult is at 2020 level, well, he must be, because he bowled the super over in the World Cup final. That in itself is evidence enough that they trust him in a pressure situation like that, where runs are essential and wickets don't really matter so much. So Jimmy Neesham, who batted in that same super over, not in the squad, going to be playing Caribbean Premier League instead. I was a little bit surprised by that one, I think, more than anything else with this 2020 squad, to be honest.
Yeah, well, who knows what's happening behind the scenes. Jimmy Neesham might not have wanted to. So you never know why a player hasn't been selected. So I don't really know what's doing there. But I think there are more nuanced, interesting selections that people aren't aware of because they don't know what's happening in the Super Smash. So people don't necessarily know that Will Young was the fourth best batsman in the Super Smash last year. Now, this is a young batsman who is apparently next in line to be the test match number 3, 4 or 5. So he's clearly viewed as being one of the best batsmen in New Zealand, and I've got him second to Devon Conway. Devon Conway was the best batsman all formats last summer. Will Young was right there with him. So I don't know what Will Young has to do. You mentioned it. You said that the T20 arena is where there is a habit of bringing young players into the team.
Well, new players,
well,
not necessarily young.
He was one of the best T20 batsmen in New Zealand last summer. So I'm just curious as to his absence. And I'm also curious in what Todd Astle's going to do wildcard, because
I have a theory.
There's always a lot of hype around Todd Astle. People love to talk about Todd Astle, but Todd Astle tends not to do anything. And he tends not to do anything either because he doesn't actually play, or, as we've explored a few times, gets used in weird ways by Captain Kane Williamson. Now, Todd Astle's in the squad. I reckon he's in this T20 squad because he's already in Sri Lanka. Didn't play a test in Sri Lanka for starters, and Todd Astle played 5 Super Smash games last summer, taking 2 wickets at an average of 69. So Todd Astle doesn't really have the T20 repetitions or production to deserve T20 international selection for the Blackcaps in this bubble. But, whatever, he's there. He's among the best cricketers in New Zealand. He's on the brink of the test team. He's on the brink of the ODI team, so get him in there. Now, you could just say that Jimmy Neesham deserved to be ahead of Todd Astle in that kind of all-rounder role, fair enough, but point being that Todd Astle's in the squad, and what Todd Astle does in these 3 T20 games could make or break his Blackcaps career. He's either not going to play a game, or he's going to play a game and barely get used, or he's going to play a game and perform really well or really bad. Any of those situations is going to determine what happens to Todd Astle in the next 6 to 12 months, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know. I think my theory is that he's not going to play any of these games. It's 3 2020s, isn't it? I don't think he'll play any of them. We've got Southee and Mitchell Santner in the squad, who are far, far superior 2020 spinners than he is. They're probably not going to pick a third spinner when they're so stocked with bowling all-rounders here. You've got, de Grandhomme, Kugelheim, Mitchell. There's enough batting. You don't need an extra all-rounder who can bowl a little bit. There's no place for him. So, what is it, a 14, 15 man, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 man squad, so 3 guys aren't going to play each game. I suspect very highly that Todd Astle will not play in any of these games, maybe 1 at the best if we win the first 2 or sort of thing, and do a little rotating, get everyone to go, but yeah, I don't know. It would be nice if that realization happens that Todd Astle keeps being picked for squads and not used. And even when he plays, he's barely used. He does have a different captain this time. Tim Southee's going to wear the old proverbial armband. So maybe he is a much bigger fan of Cantabrian leg spinners than Kane Williamson is. Who knows? But yeah, I suspect he's going to not play and then continue to not play.
Tim Southee's still from Northern Districts, and he's further away from Canterbury than Kane Williamson is. He's from Northland, so I don't really know if Tim Southee's going to view Todd Astle any more favourably.
Nice, and he's also a seam bowler, isn't he, himself, who is going to come with the natural confidence of a seam bowler who thinks, I don't care if it's Sri Lanka, I just took wickets in the test match. We can bowl seamers and win these games, especially in 2020 when it's not like you're out there all day bowling where you need to rely on conditions and really sort of massage the best stuff out of the pitch. It's just 2020, so you hit the block hole, hit your areas and belt the ball around later on and make up for it. We don't need 3 spinners, and we have 2 extremely good 2020 spinners who are proven at this level. There's just no reason for Todd Astle to play, which means there's not much reason for him to be there, which means he's not going to play, which means I think my suspicion he's going to not play, and therefore we're not going to have the evidence to make a judgment on Todd Astle, and he's going to continue to be picked for squads and then not play in the future, because that's what we've been doing for the last 12 months. Although I do think he should have played that first test ahead of Santner, just quietly.
You mentioned Scott Kugelheim. So that T20 series against India, Scott Kugelheim had an average of 103 with the ball. 10.47 RPO.
That's not good.
So I think Scott Kugelheim needs to start performing for the Blackcaps in the T20 arena. Tom Bruce has actually been playing T20 cricket in England for Surrey's second 11, where he's doing all right. He hit an 85 opening the innings with a strike rate of 146. He's done all right over in England, so he's got a good opportunity. Seth Rance has basically come into the squad for Doug Bracewell, kinda. Doug Bracewell and Blair Tickner dropped out, whereas Todd Astle and Seth Rance have come in to the squad. Seth Rance, I just feel like there's these cricketers who... I've told you a lot about this wildcard, and thus I've told our listeners a lot about how there's a large group of Kiwi cricketers who are very good and who are very young. And I'm doing my previews for all the domestic associations. Every single domestic association has a younger tinge to it. And within that younger tinge, they have a couple of players who have extremely high ceilings as cricketers. They will most likely play for the Blackcaps, and then some of them are going to be knocking on that Blackcaps door in the next 12 months. This means that for guys like Todd Astle, guys like Seth Rance, guys like Scott Kugelheim, these type of cricketers have to perform. If they are not performing and they are not demanding further selection, they will not play any more cricket for the Blackcaps, because there are going to be better younger players coming through. Trust me on that. And I'm not going to chuck Mitchell Santner in that category, but I think Mitchell Santner is in danger of falling into that category, because Mitchell Santner's plateau, or if he does end up sliding a wee bit, it's poor timing. Because any plateau right now, any plateau or slide for any Kiwi cricketer in the Blackcaps or on the fringes of the Blackcaps is coinciding with the rise of this young wave of Kiwi cricketers who are going to have long and successful international careers. So now is not the time where you want to plateau or slide. Now is the time when you want to be Tom Latham, when you want to be getting better, when you want to be performing. BJ Watling has a lot of pressure on him. Holy shit. Every association has wicketkeeper batsmen. Tim Southee, Tom Blundell, Dane Cleaver, Cameron Fletcher, Glenn Phillips. These dudes are there in Aotearoa. They are ready. They are performing. Glenn Phillips was one of the best batsmen in the Plunket Shield last summer. I'm not saying these guys are better than BJ Watling right now, because BJ Watling is performing. He is destroying the pressure. He is destroying any conversations about the young wicketkeeper batsman, because he's performing. And if you're in this Blackcaps group right now, ODI, T20 especially, perhaps Test cricket, you're going to have to start performing, because the depth is going to explode. And then suddenly, if you're not performing, other guys are going to be ready to step up and take your place. Whereas I think a lot of dudes in the current setup have enjoyed a luxury of a lack of depth. Heck, let's chuck Martin Guptill into that category as well, because we're coming off the World Cup. And if Martin Guptill continues on this plateau or slide, he's not going to be playing much Blackcaps cricket anytime in the future.
Well, Guptill's completely out of the Test picture at this point. Santner, I think, would do him well to be out of the Test picture and just be able to focus on limited overs cricket, where he's a much better bowler. But that still puts pressure. Like, the thing with BJ Watling, the pressure he's under is he's a single format guy. He's a Test match specialist. So if he drops out of that, he drops out of international cricket. Which is why the response he's shown to continue, and I think he went on a bit of a slide himself a little while ago. He had the runs in the bank so that he wasn't under too much pressure, but it got to the point where he wasn't scoring a lot of runs. And recently, in recent times, he's really come good again, and that was a fantastic innings he just turned up in his in the most recent test. So doing exactly what you want a guy to be doing when they're facing that kind of pressure. Guptill's an interesting one. I think more than Guptill, what saves Guptill certainly in the ODI series, well, first of all, is the fact that I still think he's a great batsman who's going to come good, particularly once he gets batting in New Zealand conditions. He scored a lot of runs in the ODI summer previously. I think he got at least 2 centuries. He certainly got one against Sri Lanka. So, yeah, he's got that. He's also got the fact that there's a little bit of a buffer next to him called Colin Munro, who he's a fixture in the 2020 team. He's not going to be a fixture in the ODI team any longer, I don't think. I think the World Cup might have been his last sort of hurrah in that matter. But he does, we can't separate the fact that we have to separate the fact that he's an extremely good 2020 batsman who has been scoring centuries at this level. So, yeah. In terms of the 2020 squad, that's fine. But then no one grows up dreaming of playing 2020 cricket for New Zealand. It's just something you do alongside the other stuff. So if the ODI thing is where it gets interesting with some of these guys, and yeah, there are a couple guys. It feels like the Blackcaps have an extremely stable unit, but it's stable because there's 6 or 7 locks in each format, and those other, 4 to 5 guys maybe in the sort of deeper squad things, everyone is under a little bit of pressure, and there's a lot of 2020 cricket to be played over the next year, coming up to the World Cup next October, I think it is, in Australia. So first of all, that Australia factor is important because it means someone like Todd Astle, don't really need that extra spinner in the Sri Lankan series, so we certainly won't need it in a 2020 series in Australia. So yeah, it's something that's going to be, a lot of 2020 cricket to be played. This squad is actually going to take focus, like you said. There's actually context to it now, which means that it's not just like, I will just pick the randos who happen to be around, who wants a bit of a hit. You can have a run to, ease your way into international cricket. This will be nice and fun for you, good experience. Now, we're actually trying to build a squad that can win that tournament, and we should be, because we have a good chance of winning the 2020 World Cup. It's the sort of thing we should be specifically targeting to, it's a format that we're very good at, and it's something that a lot of our players, it fits their strengths. So these squads are going to take a bit of shape from that, and guys are not going to continue to get opportunities just for the sake of giving them a run. Certainly not over this year. Maybe after that, yeah, for sure. 2020 is going to go back to being a bit of a giggle. But for the next 12 months, it is actually going to be something they're taking a little more seriously. So yeah, guys who don't perform are not going to keep getting opportunity. And I think it's quite interesting that the squad doesn't have Glenn Phillips or Mark Chapman, who each got an opportunity in the 2020 side in the past, didn't really take it, and continue to not be in the 2020 team again after I don't think they played in this last summer, but scored big Plunket Shield runs in the meantime, each of them, since then. So the response is there, the depth is there, and it's just going to be interesting how that shapes out and who's up to the challenge, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, this isn't oh my God, this is happening right now. This is a trend I'm seeing in a broader picture that I want to keep reinforcing for our listeners, because things are going to change, and I just want to make that loud and clear for Kiwi cricket fans that things are in a transition phase. It might not be obvious to some, but it's what I see as someone who dabbles in cricket. So, well, okay, we might wrap it up there. Blackcaps T20 cricket coming up. I will do a rugby league episode. We'll try to get back on the wagon with that tomorrow. Otherwise, there's also logistical issues coming up over the next few days. So we're going to come back next week we got Danny Hay, new All Whites coach. We've got the Tall Blacks. They are in a basketball World Cup, so it'll be interesting to get the Wildcard's thoughts on both of those issues. The Wildcard has written about those things at the moment. Danny Hay, All Whites coach, and the Tall Blacks. So go check those out in the meantime. Otherwise, we'll discuss both of those next week. And yes, kia kaha, stay beautiful. Thank you for listening. Let us know what you're thinking with regards to the Blackcaps, and support us as best you can. We've got a Patreon. Jump on the Patreon. That's the best way to support us. Otherwise, rate, review, like, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Kia kaha.